Hi, everyone. My name is Hannes Murray. I'm an entrepreneur living in Silicon Valley. I've always been really interested in innovation. I have been exposed a lot to the startup community here. Also tried my hand at a lot of startups. Today, I very quickly want to give you an overview of Innovation Algebra, a framework I developed to help innovators, entrepreneurs, and creators innovate much faster. So what is Innovation Algebra? Essentially, it's a ChatGPT super prompt. That just means it's a really big prompt that you copy into ChatGPT. You have to imagine it as sort of a program that, when loaded into ChatGPT, gives you a lot of superpowers. If you remember the scene from the Matrix movie, where you are in the construct and you can load anything that you need. This is essentially what Innovation Algebra Super Prompt does for you. So after you've loaded the prompt, you have to decide what you want to do. You have to decide what you want to invent, create, or learn. In the green box you see here, you should see this, where Innovation Algebra says that it's ready to innovate and solve your problems, and you have to type in your goal. In this case, we're going to actually be quite ambitious and say we want to reduce noise pollution in cities, even though we don't really know anything about it. This is your goal. The first step that's going to happen is that IA is going to start planning how to solve this problem. So it will give a lot of text output, including putting stuff in it that looks sort of really funny. These are the functions of Innovation Algebra. In the beginning, you can pretty much just ignore them and just skim over them. Unfortunately, we need them for ChatGPT to work properly and be creative. So they are there. But as time goes along, you will learn how these work, because IA will always explain what it's going to do. So here it has started creating a plan. Once it's created a plan, your next step is always to, it will ask you what is the next action you want to perform. And normally it would say something like proceed. If it doesn't say proceed, you might, sometimes it does that. You can just say continue. In this case, I'm just going to say yes. And what it does now, it goes to evaluate this plan that it developed to solve noise pollution in cities. It will again explain exactly what it does, and it will give output. For example, here it says it's exploring the knowledge frontier of noise pollution in cities, and it says cities around the world are facing increasing levels of noise pollution. It will also give all sorts of output from a lot of thinking frameworks that you might not have heard of. Here it's using something called Scamper. I won't go into details, but you can see here sort of how it looks. So it will give a lot of output, probably tell you a lot of things that you've never heard of before. And so you'll be probably inspired to learn more about the topic, or you might even discover something interesting. Now, often after it's done a lot of output, you have to decide what to do next, and you sort of hit a blank. That's sort of the default. You don't understand the topic, or you can't think of something next to do. This is very normal for humans. When you innovate, you just you sort of overwhelm. So what you do then is type in ++. That just means to activate something called Guru mode. The Guru is a little planner inside Innovation Algebra that will decide what to do next. It figures out essentially the next step. Again, it will do some planning. And if you say proceed, it will evaluate it and hope you've learned some more. After doing it a few times more, you can run very quickly through extremely long exploration sessions. You might want to know, what have we discovered so far? And then you can just type in assess. Now, this is an example of an important Innovation Algebra function that just tells you all the novel things that we've discovered. So Now we're starting to get into what the innovation algebra really is. By default, you can just use the guru mode, the plus plus, but if you really want to use it properly and learn even more, you have to start learning these functions. So let's start with some of them. So POV stands for point of view. The functions in innovation algebra are typically very short, so you don't need to type a lot. So I've memorized a lot of these, and over time we'll memorize this, and this will now give contrastive points of view. You see here it's using the feedback from an urban planner, environmental scientist, and so on. It might give a lot of output. You might not know what to do next, so you can apply the 80-20 rule to it by just typing in Pareto, and it will tell you what it thinks is the most important. So there are two functions that you could use, but there's actually a whole Swiss Army knife of them. There's probably 30 or more of them. And they can be combined together in what is called a function pipeline. We take a function, the output of that goes into the next one, and so on. On the IA website, there's a lot of examples of different functions. As I said, over time you get exposed to these. There are a few that's important that you could learn. As a beginner, guru mode is probably often the best way to start. But let's say you know a little bit more and you're interested in creative writing. So what functions are available here? So I'm going to take something from the Matrix movie, the famous scene with the red pill and blue pill. So here we're taking the topic, then we're passing it into the point of view functions, the contrast of point of view. So essentially, we're asking a bunch of people, hey, what do you have? Give me different opinions. And then say, hey, create an essay with emotional impact 9, which just means just very emotional, profundity, profoundness. It's just how much flowery wording it uses to create the essay. Again, step number 1, it will do some planning. It will explain exactly what it will do. In step 2, it will actually tell you what all the contrasted points of views are from these people that you just created out of nothing in the construct. And then it will create the essay. Now, if you read this essay, you will see it's got a lot of, I would say, profound words and so on, and it might be a little bit too much for the modern reader. You can dial it down by tweaking essentially all the knobs of the essay function. You can take it all the way down, for example, to a person that has doesn't have or is sort of in high school or so on, or somebody that has a PhD level. One of the reasons why innovation algebra is so successful is because it uses a lot of thinking frameworks. This is sort of the kung fu that Neo suddenly learns in the construct when the right program is loaded for him. You all probably have heard of brainstorming, which is the very unstructured way to develop ideas, where people are just talking about stuff and say, hey, somebody says, I have some idea, and so on. Now, this is extremely unstructured and has some mixed results. So over the years, over decades, essentially hundreds of years, people have developed different frameworks. Many of them you might not have heard of. It's not common. You learn these things in business school, or if you're a product manager, but innovation algebra knows them. For example, you have things like Scamper, design thinking, 6 hats, 5 whys, TRIZ, one of my favorites. And there's just a lot of them. Now, you don't really need to learn these. It's useful to understand a little bit what they do. And as you use innovation algebra, you'll be exposed to them automatically and you'll naturally start using them. So, okay, so once Neo says, I know Kung Fu, of course, Morpheus says, show me. So let's take a look at what's actually behind the scenes. So the innovation algebra consists of many things, functions to different things, like, for example, find things. Some things like the knowledge frontier or the research directions or names of companies and so on. or to explore, for example, to create questions, create answers, drill down, expand, distill, create inflection points of the future, making stuff simple and so on. Also functions around creation. For example, if you want to write essays like we saw before, getting feedback from points of views, getting feedback from a venture capitalist, having a board of advisors, evaluating and scoring things, improving things, and of course the guru that actually works towards the goal that you set, and you just type in plus and it does the right thing, plus all the frameworks. Here's a list of a whole bunch of them. You probably never heard of them, but it doesn't matter. Over time you will learn them. And something called FIRE, which is the meta framework. It sort of gives a higher level structure to IA's thinking, deciding which framework should be applied next. Over time, you'll learn that too. So how do you get more Kung Fu? So it's all open source. You can go to this URL on GitHub. You can see all the files and so on. The nice thing is you can just click on these little buttons, start chatting, and talk with a particular version of IA. It will be automatically loaded into ChatGPT. Continually developing it and creating new versions. The current version 2.7 is quite advanced, and it's a little bit too much for ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo. So you actually get very bad results there. If somebody can figure out how to make it better or work there, that would be great. But at the moment, you end up, if you really want to use the full power of IA, you need to get a subscription from ChatGPT from OpenAI. Now, what can you do with it? To give you an idea, we have a whole bunch of case studies in all sorts of different topics. For example, noise pollution, I showed you. Some stuff in synthetic cells, deciding when to abandon your startup, ideas to revitalize cities. Here's a fun one. Can you motivate yourself to do home chores? This one, a new type of light. We're actually trying to invent something new, and it comes up with a very interesting type of light that you might find. It's a very long read, but it's very interesting. Here's a problem you might be interested in. How can you reintroduce animals into cities? So this is more of a public policy example. So here's some heavy stuff around grid scale energy storage and some very specific stuff about regulatory sandboxes. We'll get super geeky and wonky here. Earlier version of noise pollution, startups inspired by nature. It's more about smart cities. Here we're trying to address or see if we can make some progress in human hibernation, really hard problem. More examples, including tutorials and so on. So I know it's a lot of reading. It's worthwhile reading through some of these case studies because you'll definitely learn a lot how to use it. Some of them are just essentially pure applications of Guru mode, and it's very interesting just to see what type of decisions it makes. Okay, that's essentially a summary. Where to go next? There is a new Innovation Algebra users group where you can sign up your email, and I will periodically send you an email explaining you or telling you what's happening. There are events that are being planned to teach people how to use Innovation Algebra, and of course for people to share what they've done with it. I really hope that whatever you work with, you would consider letting me know so I can make a case study out of it. There's also, of course, Twitter. On Twitter, I'm High Deeps. I'm very happy if you reach out to me with questions or ideas or complaints and so on. We're trying to build a community around innovation, and we would love you to join it. That's it for today. The good news is you know some new Kung Fu. Go out and conquer the world.